Welcome to today's episode of WooNews TV, where we bring spiritual concepts into the mainstream to make them more relatable for you. Today's topic is your health. We're going to talk about taking control of your health, in particular, some key areas, and why it's important to do that and how you can do it. Today is my guest, Dr. Sarica Cernohous. Welcome, Dr. Sarica.
Oh, thank you.
I want to, before we go into who Sarica is and all that jazz and her approach to medicine and healing, it's important for me, I think, to read the CV that she sent me. I come from a medical family, come from a family of surgeons, and I've always believed in allopathic medicine as well as the benefits of alternative therapies and other medicines from other modalities and as a path to wellness. So I have been using alternative therapies since I was probably 20 years old. So 30 some years. I'm totally dating myself. But so I strongly believe in what we're talking about today. So let me read about Dr. Sarica. She's a licensed practitioner of acupuncture and Chinese medicine, using Japanese style methods and many modern technologies in her nutritional coaching and wellness practice. She's the author of The Importance and Practical Application of Traditional Food Preparation Techniques. The Funky Kitchen is her book. And is a coach for Metabolic Balance of Germany. That's your new German medicine, right? Is that what that is?
No, I just happen to have a lot of things that
have
German involvement.
Okay, I'll continue. Since 2011, she's been sharing recipes and health articles on her website, naturallylivingtoday.com, which will be in the description. And Dr. Sarica is an active board member and secretary for the National Association of Nutrition Professionals and has been a chapter leader for the Weston A. Price Foundation for many years, and is involved in the Make Americans Free Again, which is an international organization committed to promoting health liberty, which is something we're also going to talk about. And she lives here in Arizona. So again, welcome, Dr. Sarica.
Thank you so much, Julie. I'm just so pleased to be here. Thanks.
I've been working with Sarica myself for quite a while. So I'm thrilled to have her wisdom to share with everyone. Why don't you tell us initially your approach and your educated approach to medicine and wellness?
Yeah. After practicing for a number of years, I really have appreciated how much the wellness is from within. Many years ago in my acupuncture treatments, I would find that I would say to patients, not, oh, we've made some significant shifts here in the treatment, and kind of pat myself on the back for it. I would always naturally be inclined to say to the patient, you have done such a great job with this. Mm-hmm. Your pulse, your abdomen, the way that your body feels as I'm working on it is doing so much better than when we started the treatment today. And so I know that was an early kernel, an early essence of how I have an innate respect for the capacity to heal within each of us. And over the years of practicing, working with nutrition as I do, and looking at other outside influences and the impact that they can have on our health, I just recognize that there's so much that we can be challenged with. And part of it is becoming aware of what these issues are, not becoming mentally owned through fear of them, mm-hmm. but doing what we can to make changes, to mitigate where we can, so that we're able to do things better for ourselves. And that's also there are going to be some commonalities among people. There are things that are just not super good for the human body. But within that, as a foundation, we also have to recognize that, there are distinct differences between each of us. And so, getting to know yourself. And for my entire life, there have been commercials run on the television that, run by different pharma companies saying, before you begin an exercise program, or before you look to change this dietary, stipulation, whatever, or before you look to take a medication, be sure and check with your doctor. And so the messaging that we have received throughout our entire lives has been, don't trust your body. You mm-hmm. need to hand this off to somebody else to tell you if it's okay for you or not. And boy, that's a big pot of worms we could unpack right there. We could talk an hour about that, but I hope you can see that the foundation here is to begin knowing yourself.
Right.
And that we've grown up in a culture that has really tried to do everything to keep us from doing that.
Well, and the connection for this information and content with the WooNews spiritual concepts for me is the whole point of the self-sovereignty. And the more the spiritual path is about becoming more sovereign with your health and your energy field and your connection to source and your body and your thoughts and the world you live in and all of the above. And this is one element to that. And you are saying your body knows, and it's a matter of us trusting that and learning what those signals are and how to pay attention to that.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's one of the most important things, and it's been blunted, and we don't know what our signals are. And it is something that I certainly try and help my patients or the people that I work with in some type of nutritional or wellness counseling to begin to know that and to trust that. So yes, to me that is absolutely foundational, because we live in our body. We're the ones that are making choices for ourselves every day. And so the more that we can get clear on what it is that we really need, and to not try and tamp that down with stimulants or depressants, but instead to let that true expression be there. Maybe it's that you need a nap. Maybe it's that you need to get to bed earlier. Maybe it's that you need to pull away from your electronics, whatever the thing may be. It's beginning to know what those signals are and responding accordingly.
So what is disease? What is disease? Can you give an explanation for that in a few minutes, or is it too broad?
Disease, in my opinion, disease
in your practice of medicine.
In my practice, yes, is some movement away from a balanced, joyful, peaceful body response and mind response. And so disease is nothing more than information. It's telling us something that is off the beaten path of what it is that we need. And so in the culture that we live in, so much of disease has been wrapped up in a concept of invasion, of things coming from the external, and that we need to protect ourselves.
Like a bacteria or something like that.
Yeah. Sure. Yep. Something along those lines. And I'm not going to say that that is not, in fact, something that we do deal with from time to time. We do. The perspective that I come from is, what can we do to better supplant ourselves from within, so that we are, if there is an invasion, that we're able to handle whatever that invasion may be. And that also, when we are looking at possibly, these more chronic presentations, an autoimmune presentation, something along the lines of cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, these types of diseases, which in the natural medicine arena are called lifestyle diseases. There's already a discussion point within the circles that I've practiced within, that these are actually outcomes to how we've lived our lives. Many epigenetic choices that we have made that have taken a genetic template of our body, but either things that are external to us that we don't have a lot of control over. But let's be honest, there are so many things that we do have control over, that when we present with disease, that is information saying you are off the right path for what you need. And so how can we respond accordingly? So in my mind, and the way that I practice, it's not, here's the disease and that's the end of the story, and that's just what it is, it's set in stone. My approach and my belief is, how can we work with that information to get the body back to a healthier state so that it's not presenting with these disease symptoms?
Okay, so what I always say in videos and in these shows, I always remind people that our external reality is a reflection of our internal. And it seems that I'm drawing the conclusion here, Dr. Sarica, that if we focus on this, then we can handle all of this. and have less of all of this disrupt the internal. Is that correct? So you're
Yeah,
storing yourself up from the inside out as opposed to always trying to protect yourself from the outside in.
right.
Okay.
You know, whether you're working with, um, you know, the body itself on a very anatomical, physiological presentation. Let's say someone, you know, has long-standing back pain. Well, if their core strength is not engaging, if those intrinsic muscles are not firing at the deepest part of their vertebral expression, down low in their sacrum, in this area, their root is not going to be strong. So everything is going to be externally driven. And we see people, I can't help but watch how people move. And I see how you bet. Yes.
You want to go up there and say, hey, let me show you this.
You know, and it's not with judgment. It's just,
no, I know. It's
you know,
information.
it's information. Yeah. And I always try and make a point of seeing how people walk up for their treatment so I can see how they're moving in that day. That's such important information. And I say this because that is a very physical way that we can see that if we do not have our core strong, if we do not have an inner strength that is true, that we can inherently call upon, then we're always going to be doing these external things. And I'll tell you, I mean, because I certainly have had my history of back issues. So I speak from firsthand experience of how much we try and do from an external standpoint, when if we just had that strength at the middle, we wouldn't be doing all this. And let's talk about that, Julie, because if the strength at the middle is not strong and you're out here trying to do stuff, that's going to put you even into more pain, to more discomfort, because that inner strength can't handle all the things that are moving around right here.
I'm thinking about my shoulder issue right now and how I'm perhaps not engaging my core enough in CrossFit that's making this just kind of fly around like it shouldn't be doing.
Exactly. Okay. And so I want to give that as a very physical example,
right.
But certainly, yeah, I mean, that can get into a strong inner microbiome, a strong inner working of the organ systems throughout the body, and most certainly a strong inner compass of the emotional content of our lives and the spiritual content of our lives. If we can remember that about us, you know, one of the things that I think I just fell in love with Chinese medicine, I remember when I went into my first theory class back in the 90s, I left that 3-hour class and I just felt like I had been given back a language that I didn't know that I had lost. And it was game on, you know, it was like, thank you. And so one of the things that I love so much about it is it's such a common sense way of looking at the body in relationship to the external environment, looking at the world, looking at the cosmos. Every action has, you know, a counter action to it. Everything that we put out there is going to have something that is going to respond to that. And one of the beautiful images that I remember from my training in Chinese medicine is that we're no different really than like a tree. Like as we're recording this right now, I live in northern Arizona, and I'm already beginning to see the shift of moving from the full expression of summer and into the fall. And as that happens, I see what's happening to the birch tree and to the ivy that's in the front yard. I see these things as the coloration that's changing. The branches are, you know, starting to look a little thinner. And what that is if we didn't have an awareness of what was going on, we could say, oh my gosh, there could be some kind of blight. You know, the tree could be sick or something. When in fact, the wisdom of nature is that full expression of energy in the tree or the ivy bush out front, it can no longer be out there because the external environment is going to become harsh. It's going to become cold. It's going to become more dry. And so all that energy comes back into the root. And we are like that too. We need to balance what we have out here in our expression with the world. And if something is not safe, on a physical level, on an emotional level, on a spiritual level. It doesn't make sense for us to continue to leave ourselves out there that way. We have to hunker down a little bit, bring it back into the root. We have to protect our essence that way.
And shore it up.
Shore it up. Exactly.
So which leads me to a segue here, unintentionally. The immune system, does everything flow from there, or is that too general of a statement?
Well, in Chinese medicine, we would call it the Wei Qi, which is the protective qi of the body. And it's an interesting concept because the Wei Qi circulates on the external portion of the body. And just as I was saying, in the full summer expression, that is pretty, that aspect of our energy is pretty open right out there. And there's a theory that, as part of this entire way of looking at energy in the body, that as our energy begins to come back toward the middle as we move into fall and most certainly deep into winter.
To stay warm, so to speak.
Stay warm, exactly. To hold that energy in and to reboot it with good nutrition and good rest in the wintertime. But as that begins to come in, any pathogenic influence in the external can begin to be pulled back in. And so from this framework, it's very important that we do look after our energy as we move from summer into the fall. And the fall is, of course, known as the time of, the beginning of the cold and flu season. And when we consider that, oh, maybe there was some type of pathogenic, stressful influence that we're not quite as strong to be able to push off as we might have been able to when our energy was really out here. And in fact, as our energy recedes, we want to make sure we're not actually bringing that into the root.
Right, bring other stuff with us.
That's right. Yes. So from a Chinese medicine perspective, that is definitely how I and many other practitioners would see this concept of immunity. I also, we wear many hats. I think if you've been alive, but most certainly if you've been alive and you've been a practitioner of natural medicine, I think that it's reasonable to have an open mind and to consider different ways that you might frame things. So another hat that I really consider, and it's really much based in the work that I've been so engaged with around nutrition for so many years, is the terrain theory, and making sure that inner root, that deep well that we spring from, is strong and robust and resilient and able to handle the challenges that we bump into, whether they be on a physical plane or an emotional plane. All of those can have quite an impact because, you've got your energy source, your body that you're working with. And we've all had it happen, haven't we? Where we bumped into a super, super stressful experience, and how physically draining that can be to us. That's an energetic expression right there.
Right.
So yeah, honoring where our influence can be challenged, and the stronger we can be internally, the better we can handle when those things come. And we also have a better awareness of making sure that when we see those types of situations arising, that we do our part to downgrade them, to not engage in them to the best of our ability, which is not to say that, we just, get out of Dodge. It's not that. It's a matter of maturely managing who and what we are to the best of our ability in the situations we find ourselves in.
Okay, can you give some practical examples of taking care of your immune system, of really taking charge of that? Because the whole purpose of this is to take charge. We got to start taking charge of our health. Some areas of the country, I think, are a little more mindful of that than others, but it's still overall we need to take more control of our health and lessen our dependence on institutions and all of that chaos. So how would we start? What does it look like to start taking care of your immune system?
I think one of the very first things is sleep, because that is Yeah. Had a good night's sleep last night. It was great.
I love a little 20-minute nap too. That's all good to go. Yeah.
So yeah, sleep is huge. And the way that we've been trained to live, most notably over the last 20 years, with the blue light electronics around us at all times, and now blue focused LED lights in homes, all of that is really, really tough on the natural biorhythm of the body. And
I didn't think about LED lights.
What do I think?
That's like you being in front of a blue screen all the time?
Yes, and people put LEDs all throughout their home, and many of them are very cold tone, more in that blue tone. So if a person's going to use LED lights, definitely look for something in a warmer tone.
Okay.
Yes. I actually am just a fan of incandescent lights, and
regular light bulbs, but they're hard to find anymore.
They are. They are. So, and they kick off a little nice warmth, which is good because where I live, it's more cold than it is warm. And so, yes, so even the lighting has an impact on our sleep. And that includes making sure, again, over the last few years, what's happened, so many people have gone from already being on devices a lot, in socializing on devices and this sort of thing. Over the last 2.5 years, that's just gone off rails.
Right.
People being indoors all the time. And it is paramount that people get outside every day, get some sunshine on their bodies, on their foreheads, on their forearms, without sunscreen, without sunglasses, without sun hats. We are creatures of the solar system, and that is a trigger to our pineal gland to get into proper biorhythm for proper sleep. And so get outside.
For better functioning immune system.
For better functioning immune system, exactly. And so folks, even if it's 10 minutes a day, please go outside. And I'm not saying go out there and get sunburned, but get out there and get a relationship with the sun again.
I remember you told me to do that after my mother died last year.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's calming to our nervous system.
It's very soothing.
It's very,
even the sun is very soothing.
Yeah, I know.
Here in the valley in Phoenix area.
Phoenix, exactly. It really is soothing. And so that's the yin yang balance of Chinese medicine, right? In the daytime, that's what we would call a very yang energy. It's more male, it's more active, it's sunny, it's bright. The yin time is the evening and the deep darkness of night. If we don't have good yang activity during the daytime, it is going to challenge a good yin activity, which is sleep and rest and restoration at nighttime. So these things must go together. They must go together. And then certainly, thinking about, okay, how does that shape up for getting a good night's rest? Well, that is starting to dim the lights in your home, not keeping yourself in front of a screen, not staying engaged with the screen. People reading, books on a Kindle type device. Don't do that. Pick up a regular book. Don't do that.
See a regular book. I had to blow up my font really big. You're killing me today. We got to go.
So anyways, deep, good restorative sleep. Honestly, if we're talking about the most basic things that each of us can do, it doesn't cost you anything.
No.
It will have.
I think where everybody's so stressed, they're more and more sleep deprived.
I know. They are. And it's because you're staying in that sympathetic yang energy tone when you should be in a parasympathetic yin energy tone. But it's the hubbub of the heart. So the heart in Chinese medicine is the emperor of all emotions, and it is correlated to the fire element. And so if you have a lot of emotions that are not being handled, it is going to keep generating this fire energy, and it's going to keep you from getting a good sleep. So you've got to do what you can to, because we all have periods of time in our lives when we're stressed. And I know the thing that certainly helped me, it's helped a lot of my patients. We will just write down what we know we have to get to the next day, and we promise ourselves we're going to get to it. We know it's going to happen. We're not going to let ourselves down. You write those things down and then you let them go. And then you go read something nice and get into bed. If you need to take a little bit of melatonin and that feels right to your body to help you get into a sleepier state, then do that. But beginning to make good sleep hygiene cornerstone it's really the biggest thing. And then of course I follow that up. Yep. And then I'd follow it up with, what you can do with your nutrition.
Oh, I'm afraid to even go there.
Oh, stop.
I mean, I haven't eaten meat since I was 14, but it doesn't mean I'm a healthy eater. I can say that with honesty and little shame.
I know.
So do you want to toss out a couple of nutrition tips, or is that too big of a beast?
It's a big beast, but
I can always go to your book, which all information will be in the links below.
Yeah, sure. The book is a great place. I will say, I do feel like the book is for someone who is already appreciating how important it is to look at pastured meats and organic true organic growing methods. And they want to do it better. They want to get more from their nutrition than what they think they should be getting on the return, for what they're putting into it. So
for starters, what would you do?
Yeah,
so for not already that informed.
Well, obviously, I just hit a couple of them. Just making sure that you're not eating processed foods. Like, let's start there.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of organic processed foods. So, of course, it's good, better, best, right? So, if you're eating from the inner aisles of a standard grocery store, well, look for at least organic options. That would be better than what you're currently doing, and continue to move in the direction of starting with, okay, the organic processed food, but then getting into the concept of actually, okay, now I'm going to move into organic food and I'm going to look at some recipes and I'm going to get the basic ingredients and I'm going to start making this food myself. Because if any person were to pick up a box or a can or a frozen package and look at what is actually in that, how many of those ingredients would actually be able, even if you wanted them, how could you get those into your own cupboard? You couldn't do that.
That's a good and scary question. Yeah. It's so simple.
It's so simple. And so if you kind of use that as your guidepost, it's like, then it's like, okay, well, if I can't actually get it,
do I pronounce it? B, get
it? Exactly. Yeah. Right. Then it's okay. So how would I, make up, whatever that recipe is that I'm paying much more for than I should be because it's processed. And we have all heard about supply chain shortages that are happening. And the way that what I have seen is more supply chain shortages happening on the processed foods than on the actual perimeter shopping of the grocery store, which is where you're going to find those basic components, the meats, the dairy, the bulk goods like dried beans and rice and things like this, and certainly the produce.
Those are on the better list. All the periphery is on the healthier.
The periphery is healthier. Okay. And on balance it is, right? It's just less processed. It's going to take more of you and less of General Mills or Kraft or, any of these companies that make these mass marketed processed foods. So in that vein of, looking at immunity and our health, it's not my opinion. The research has shown that when there is obesity, there is more of a proclivity toward immune function issues. And that was played out a little bit with the comorbidity discussion as the COVID debacle was occurring.
Mm-hmm. There was a big conversation about that.
There was. And
lots of conversations, I should say.
Yes. And so it absolutely has a bearing there. From the position of just having a healthy body, that is going to occur as you are really being mindful of eating a great diet that nourishes you, that doesn't overstuff you, that doesn't pollute you, that allows you to have the energy that you need without weighing you down. And again, as we started the discussion, our cues are really messed up. in of like, I don't know if I'm hungry. I don't know if I'm full. I mean, people are so unclear on what their signals are.
And I would imagine, so I'm thinking of, is there a Chinese medicine approach to helping people understand the why behind their inability to lose weight or make the connection between and then when I'm talking about losing weight, I'm not talking about being a size 0. I'm talking about having a healthy body, like you're talking about.
Right.
The resistance to having a healthier body and the why behind that, the emotions, the fears, the traumas, that component. Is there a Chinese medicine approach to addressing that?
Yeah. Because the thing is in Chinese medicine, every one of the organ systems has emotional content related to it. So, for instance, the earth element, which is the spleen and stomach, that can be where we ruminate too much, where we overthink.
Oh,
we get the earworm happening,
I don't
right?
know anything about that.
Yes. So that can be an expression of the earth element being out of balance. And we can find that we crave sweets and carbohydrates. So that could be that expression. So you have to kind of look at who the person is and how they show up. The wood expression, which is the liver and gallbladder, that is expressed emotionally through anger and boundary issues when it's out of balance. And it is correlated with wanting to have to control things this way. So that can be another expression of people who have disordered eating patterns, maybe anorexia or bulimia, something like that. It's a control issue. And so, you have to really get down to the brass tacks of what each person is dealing with, how they're wired, so that you can help to navigate those waters, help them to see themselves, and hopefully support them, maybe with acupuncture, certainly with looking at different types of foods, and then the behaviors around those foods. That's a really big part of it as well.
And getting them to even want to take care of, it's such a cliche, but that self-love component, that self-worth component of having a healthier, more functional body.
Yes, that's huge.
That can carry you through life.
Folks have to be ready to do this.
Yeah.
And usually the thing that gets people ready is some degree of pain. I talk a lot about this low-hanging fruit, and we're wired to do that. Why make things harder than they need to be? And so we're wired, hey, if it's easy living, and this entire society that we live in is designed to make it so easy. Yeah. And anytime something's a bit of an effort, we have an app for that. We'll fix that. And
comes right to your door now.
Exactly. Yeah. So so then it usually, let's be honest, there usually has to be some type of pain that generates a desire for change.
In general, with everything, I think.
Everything. Yep. So yes, there is an absolute way of looking at these relationships with food and nutrition and how we nourish ourselves and look after ourselves, in the realm of Chinese medicine. It's just
empower yourself to want to move forward with that and make those changes for yourself and those around you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about viruses now. And viruses have been around for ever, it seems, at least from my little bit of knowledge. Not all of them are politicized, as this one has become, but you have, from your medical practice, you have a different take on viruses that I had never heard before. And I thought it was very empowering and an excellent approach to this element. So why don't you let us know what that is?
Okay. And it's a different way of looking at things. So when it comes to this discussion about viruses, my answer to that is, why is it that whatever may be found in the sputum, rather than us...
what sputum is?
Oh, sputum mucus, okay. the droplets, right?
Okay.
Yeah, the droplets, okay?
I thought so, but I just wanted to clarify.
Why is it that is actually something that makes somebody sick? Why isn't that isn't just the end product of the body completing an expression of clearing whatever, it's clearing. So we have been brought up to be very afraid of symptoms. Oh, I've got a headache. Oh, I've got a hangnail. Oh, I've got some sniffles. Oh, my throat's feeling kind of congested. Um, the body doesn't make mistakes. That is such an important thing to know. The body doesn't make mistakes. When you show up with something, it's because the body is giving you a signal that it is working on something. And there's a reason that it's working on something. There's absolutely, it could be that the terrain is off. Maybe you've been eating foods that are not what your body needs at that time. And maybe you've been eating too many of them. And so part of the body's clearing of, maybe 2 donuts for breakfast for a week is going to be on the 8th day that actually you notice that your throat is kind of congested feeling. And, you're just feeling kind of sluggish and logy. Mm-hmm. That is the body saying, I'm just congested. I need to get this out of myself. So it's going to come through the lymph. It's going to come through mucus production. So to reframe what symptoms mean, that they're actually an expression of healing, as opposed to this, oh my gosh, the illness is upon me, this external invasion that we've talked about. My husband got super sick in December of 2019. We came back from California, and he's very stoic. He's a person who always works through things. He could not get out of bed for 5 days. I had to go in and make sure he was breathing. I mean, it was that bad. Yeah. But we have to say, what was his body at that level? Why was he hit so hard?
Where was his immune system? What was his terrain? What did it look like at that time?
What was going on for him? What was the stress in his life that he was carrying? And what all was healed in the process of moving through that symptom expression?
Meaning,
you can come away from these experiences if you have the right frame of mind. And I'll be honest, at that time when he was sick that way, I hadn't started looking at the world that way. Mm-hmm. I was still very much I always had a deep appreciation for the terrain and strengthening internally, but I didn't, I really had that external invasion concept very much, in my mind, because that's how I was raised.
Sure.
And it was the common way of looking at the world in my culture and your culture too. And so now, if one of us, gets to not feeling well, we're presenting with some type of symptom. Julie, I can't tell you the difference of how you approach something when you think, okay, wait a minute, I'm healing something now. Mm-hmm. And I am going to come back stronger from this. I'm clearing out the bad tissue. I'm letting a fever run, obviously it gets up to 105 degrees or something. You need to, be having some interventions there. But for a moderate fever, all your body is doing at that point is it's no different than, loosening water into a canal. We are giving more free flow into the fluid, into the lymph of the body when we dial up the heat a little bit.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know.
Yes.
So and you literally are healing when your body's off like that. You're literally healing other things.
You are literally healing. You're bringing in greater nutrition, greater oxygenation, and whatever else we haven't even named yet that the body does.
Really important thing I want people to know to what you just said. That's key.
Yeah.
It also takes away the fear of getting sick.
It totally does. And again, I'm not saying be flippant. But listen, when we don't feel well, we don't feel well. So park yourself, sit yourself down, stop trying.
Go there. Exactly.
Yeah, just go there and then just look after yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Give yourself the time. And stop trying to make it something other than what it is, because it really is an opportunity to come back better, truly better.
Okay, so ergo, this is a question, not a statement. When I had COVID a year ago, I had a very difficult year of a lot of loss and some surgeries and breaking my foot and losing my mother and things like that. So could me getting COVID, would the expression of this was my body's way of healing from that trauma. And this, I forgot the words that you used.
Exosome.
Yeah,
Exosome
was just part of the healing process that my body was already going through. Is that correct? My
that
understanding
is,
correctly?
you know, when you told me everything that had gone on, because
Yeah.
you and I talked at that time, when you told me everything that had gone on,
You probably weren't surprised.
I
I was
wasn't.
feeling the way I was
I was
feeling.
like,
Yeah.
gosh, because we've all had tremendously stressful experiences. Think about how you feel right after you just miss being T-boned by somebody, you know, who runs a red light when it's your turn. Um, think about the exhaustion that you feel as your body recovers from that near miss. That is that's so challenging to our energetic expression. And so with that in mind, when you have hit after hit after hit, like what you had, Julie, and so many people have in their lives, why not step back and say, actually, I think I need to look after myself better. And it could very well be that at this point in your life, when you finally did have that COVID expression where you felt sick, and you were run down and you couldn't do much and everything was kind of off, why isn't it that it just is your body's final opportunity to get in there and repair the things that didn't have the energy to be repaired for a period of time, because you were healing the trauma of loss with your mom. You were healing the trauma of actual surgeries and broken bones and all of this, and then the societal cultural trauma that we were all going through.
So it can literally be part of your body's natural healing process at that time.
Yes. And so, you know, when people, they get
that sure takes the fear out of it, doesn't it?
It totally does. And that to me is so beautiful, because it's not to say like I don't, you know, get to feeling sick sometimes. It happened to me twice last year. And I think about it wholly differently though than when I would get sick prior to this real shift in my thinking. And I looked at, okay, what kind of led up to this? There was a lot of emotional charge, you know, in one way or another. That was part of it. I was pushing too hard. And I finally came into a place, because you'll hear this about mothers, and I know I lived it myself. When, you know, you've got young children and you're running and running and running and running after them, and they may be, you know, present with a cold or something, but you stay well. But when it finally hits Friday afternoon and you know you don't need to be on the clock with working and getting around to other responsibilities, that's when you start getting the sore throat or the sniffles. And it's because your body knows it's moved into a safe place to finally allow some healing and recovery, the energy that was not allotted to that during the time when you were running and going and going. So
good analogy.
It is. And so in your place, you know, something must have finally just, you know, you let off the gas just a little bit, and it was just enough for your body to say, okay, I'm safe now. I can start doing this recovery. I'm not saying this is how it works out in every situation, but I want to use this as an opportunity to look at symptom expression and how we can begin to consider this in a different light.
And to change our thinking about it. So instead of panicking and I have to do all this and get rid of this and take care of this quickly, it's more about allowing the process, taking care of your body as the process is moving through, and just allowing the process instead of being completely fearful about it.
That's right. And like, oh my gosh, you know, what's going to get, because on a continuum with terrain theory, it shares many foundations to it, is something that some may want to look at. It's called German New Medicine or Germanic medicine. And let me give you a brief overview of it. It's a way of looking at symptoms that came to the thinking of a doctor who worked with a lot of cancer patients in the late 70s. And this was a man who was very healthy, who had a very robust life. Like, he did well financially, things were great. And his 17-year-old son was unexpectedly shot by an Italian prince. And this boy was just beautiful. I mean, the photographs of this boy, just so beautiful. Mm-hmm. And he didn't die immediately. He malingered for a few months, and then he ended up dying in his dad's arms.
Oh, God.
I know. And shortly after that, the doctor developed testicular cancer. And he had an awareness. He looked at his life, he looked at his health, and he said, this doesn't make sense. That me, a man of my age and health and whatnot, I should not develop testicular cancer. And so, because he worked so closely with cancer patients, and so many of them, he started talking to his cancer patients. And he said to each of them, did something happen right before, or some bit before your cancer diagnosis that was a trauma in your life? Mm-hmm. And 100 times out of 100, the people said yes. And so his name was Dr. Hammer. And what he was able to do is he had access to the CAT scans of these people's brains. And he was able to go in and look at these scans of each of their brains. And Julie, I'm not kidding. The first time I saw some of these images, I thought like an editor had taken, like, okay, look at this little focal point here on the brain image, and you'll see there's a little bit of cloudiness or something. That is in fact not what happened. There are actual circles that the body generates in specific areas of the brain. And based upon the development of the embryo and the fetus and the nervous system and the tissues of the body, the different development of the brain, from the brain stem to the cerebellum to the midbrain and then to the cerebral cortex, correlates to different tissues in the body. When there is a trauma for a given person, given their life history, their innate constitution, if there is a true unexpected trauma that occurs for someone based upon who they are, they can generate this traumatic space in the brain that is going to have a target tissue that is connected to it.
Okay, well, this has been great. I want to touch on, if we can, before we sign off, health liberty. What is that? What is that?
That is
not something we've really heard of before, I don't think. I haven't, at least.
But. Okay, yeah. It's something that I didn't until I did. Isn't that
right,
like
exactly? I didn't until the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's I'm living the low-hanging fruit existence just like everybody else. And so I just buy organic foods. But I mean, in many ways, I'm just not that different than everybody else.
Right.
But I have seen, through the lens of what we were just discussing, the encroachment upon our personal choice, our health liberty,
how we handle our own health and how we treat it.
That's right. And for or for our parents who are, elderly parents who are in our care, being an advocate for one another. And that's a responsibility. It's a responsibility to ourselves. And that has been one thing that I have always espoused, is in the natural health realm. It's like, please, people, embrace self-responsibility. I just didn't understand the degree to which it could be encroached upon until the last couple of years.
Well, I don't know that it has. Honestly, I'm going to frankly say I don't think it has been encroached upon as it has been the last few years.
Yeah, it's been something that...
in our lifetime, at least.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. And so things really have been very challenging. And that is, it means so much to me. And I think once people wake up to it, they realize how much it means to them. Because if you do not have autonomy over your body and the ability to move freely about the land, your country, into other countries, and make decisions for yourself, procure the types of food and the quality of water and the quality of components that you want in your home.
And the medical approaches that you feel are
that you
right
want
for
to
you.
use. That's right. That are correct for you and your family.
Legal, of course, but there's a lot out there. There's a
And
lot of modalities and approaches that
there
are
are
effective that are out there. It's not a one size fits all.
at all, at all. And
So health liberty is about maintaining the ability to do that.
have choice.
Question. Okay.
Yeah, liberté. It's about choice. It's about freedom. And, for people who have felt very comfortable with, taking the shots that have been put out there, these maybe aren't issues that they even see as a problem, because it's like, they just don't see it. They've not seen any evidence problem. But for people who have elected for various reasons to say that that is not the right choice for me, and to be expected to wear a mask, and someone to say, no, for whatever my reason may be, that is not right for me. It's not right for my child. For people who didn't follow the directives, and some of them were at the loss of jobs, at the loss of education, at the
loss of relationships and family
relationships. Exactly. They haven't, this is a conversation that means nothing to them. However, there may come a point, even with, working within the parameters that have been put in front of you, that you're going to follow these rules, that we're putting forth, whether it's implicit or explicit. At some point, someone may bump up against something that they say, wait a minute, that's over the line for me.
Yeah.
And so the earlier that we can stand in our personal choice and continue to honor what it is that we know is right for ourselves and for our family, and to hold
all the options that are available,
all options, that is what health liberty is. And it of course is based upon personal freedom. I mean, health liberty is just one incarnation of what it means to have freedom to make choices and move about as is fit, that is responsible to you as a person, while also being responsible to the people of your community at large.
Yeah.
This is about respecting one another's space.
Yeah.
And treating one another with care and respect.
Which it's interesting, because that is something that's been talked about in other avenues of society, and it's crucial, in every area of society.
Yes.
Personal preferences, religious practices, sexuality, race, all of that, it all flows from that, is respecting each person's choices and space and right of being.
That's right.
To their fullest expression, whatever that might be. Yes. And health liberty is the same thing.
And it's on a continuum with it. Exactly. And so that is, you mentioned Make Americans Free Again, and that's an organization that I've been involved with for the last year and a half or so. And they're very committed to helping people maintain health liberty, not just nationally through litigation efforts and tremendous education, but also through international efforts at this point. And so I'm very grateful for the work that the organization does. All practitioners, they need to work within a realm that feels right to them. And then there are going to be patients that are going to be a right fit for how that practitioner shows up. And that's cool. That's wonderful. But again, that goes back to choice. That's not being, railroaded into a specific behavior that is expected of you. And that's what we saw a lot of, and continue to see a lot of. If we're strong internally, if we feel well, if we're resting well, and we show up well, to each day, we can handle this challenge that we're experiencing. But
any challenge for that matter.
Any challenge. That's the truth of it. Any challenge, because the day rolls on and the challenges do too.
Right. 2 of them leave and 3 more come back, and then those leave, and then there's more. It's just part of the flow of life, right?
That's right. And so, it's about just being just showing up as best you can. And I just want that for all of us.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
It's been great. So I'm going to have a whole bunch of links to her website. Do you work with people remotely, Dr. Sarica?
I do. Yes,
okay.
I do.
Also to her Funky Kitchen information and maybe some other information that she'd like to put down there, this organization, if you want that on there, etc. So we'll have a whole bunch of links down there so you can find more information about what we've talked about today. So I thank you so much for your time, and I hope everyone enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this. And we'll see you next time.